Hi, I'm Dr. Andrew Chappell, and welcome to my presentation on supplements. So, if you're watching this video, you're probably one of my pro prep coaching clients. If not, then please do allow me to talk you through this presentation on supplements. If you like this content, then be sure to like, share, and subscribe to some of my other content on the YouTube. Check out the Instagram channel with all the videos that are on there. And then, of course, be sure to check out some of the results that we've had with our clients. All the stuff that I talk about in this presentation here are things that I do with my own clients and are evidence-based. So you can use these principles yourself to get your own great results and apply them to your own physique. So without any further ado, let me get into this. So, sports supplements. Now, I started in bodybuilding, I think it must have been around about 2003, 2004. So I've been interested in bodybuilding and bodybuilding supplements now for probably the best part of 20 years. I spent a good amount of time sponsored by this company here called Extreme Nutrition. I actually worked for them for a period as well in their warehouse, and traveling around the country, going to expos, going to bodybuilding events, talking to people about supplements and supplements that they use. I think I've tried just about every supplement that you can use on the market as a natural athlete. So I'm well invested in supplements, and there's something that have always interested me as something that I've tried to utilize to try and get that extra 1 or 2% out of my body when I've been training for events. All that being said, I am also a scientist and I've studied supplements as well. I've been very interested in what people are utilizing and whether or not some of this stuff actually works. So that's just a little bit about me before we get going, and hopefully you'll find this interesting. So I'm really interested in championship bodybuilding and helping people get ready for bodybuilding events. So this is me here getting ready for the NABA Universe in 2019, and my good lady Steph Noble, she's a pro figure competitor. And I've had athletes in my lab down the years, and I've written many scientific papers on bodybuilding and the effects of bodybuilding contest preparation on the human body, and the strategies that we should potentially be utilizing to offset some of the side effects that we experience, but also to get the most out of our physiques at the same time. So by all means, please do go and check me out after this. Check out PubMed, and you can check out some of our articles, because as I say, we always use these techniques to work with our own athletes. These are just some of our athletes that we've worked with in the last year, so I'm not going to go through these athletes individually, but in 2021 alone, we had 32 athletes competing, and I think it was 63 individual shows, and we ended up right at the end of the year at the World Championships, where we had in the end a total of 7 athletes competing in the WNBF World Finals. So it was a very successful year for us. We were very proud of all the things that our athletes managed to achieve. So if you're interested in the content that I'm talking about, and if you go all the way through this video and you think that we can potentially help you out with your own bodybuilding pursuits, then please do let us know. Okay, so I've given you a little bit of a brief, but I'm going to talk a little bit about my life and supplements. I'm going to talk a little bit about scientific research, how sports supplements work, what supplements you should be using, and then I'm going to finish on high risk supplements. Okay, so I first started utilizing supplements looking for an edge way back in 2002. And I remember it very, very well. Working out in the gym, trying to be the best athlete I could possibly be, and then looking around the gym and seeing some other guys who are a little bit bigger than myself, and thinking they've got something, they've got an edge, and I want whatever that is as well at the same time. I used to read bodybuilding magazines quite a lot. I was inspired by lots of great bodybuilders like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Frank Zane, Dave Draper, all these sort of guys. And I sort of thought to myself, well, those guys, they all used anabolic steroids, but I'm going to use supplements and do everything naturally, and I'm still going to be able to get some great results. And that was sort of my mindset at the time. So I remember buying my very first tub of protein powder and going to the shop and purchasing it. It was extremely expensive, really poorly tasting. It was some Pro Max Maxi Muscle product. cost a fortune, as I say. It probably wasn't particularly useful, but I had the secret at that point there, and I'd started using supplements, like I say, way back then. I first couple of supplements I started using were protein powders, multivitamins, and creatine. Those were the main ones. Like I say, I worked in the supplement industry between 2007 and 2009. I've also been a consultant in the development of lots of products. I've signed non-disclosure agreements on development of different products, and I've been going to events, as I say, like things like Body Power. Down the years, I'm affiliated with this brand here, Chemical Warfare now, who Extreme Nutrition used to be the same namesake, so I thought that was a good one to get on board with. And myself, I've been involved in at least 5 trials where I've published on sports supplement usage, and another 4 trials where I've talked about supplement usage which people have utilised. So 5 trials investigating if they work or not, 4 trials whether or not they actually, what is it people are using. And I've always been interested in that, looking for the 1% gains that you could potentially get from these things. As I said already, this is me here on the left-hand side. 81 kilograms, I think I am there, and 5'9", whereas this is a current reigning Mr. Olympia, Big Ramy, he's called, 134 kilograms and 5'9". And I sort of always had this impression that I could just simply take protein powder. I didn't need the drugs or anything like that, or any sort of hardcore products, and I could get the same results as these guys. And how wrong I was, I guess, down the years. Okay, in terms of things that I've utilised myself, like I said, I think I've literally used and tried everything. I'm not going to go through this list, but you can pause this video yourself and have a look. But I've tried most things that natural athletes can utilise. I've never gone on and utilised any of the non-natural products that you can get out there on the market, like your SARMs or your testosterone modulators, which are effectively your pro hormones. But everything else I've more or less tried down the years. And I think this is a gateway for most people. They start out using protein powder, they try a little bit of creatine, and then after that they go on and they try some of the other stuff like health supplements, pre-workouts, fat burners, and then things like that. So yeah, I've pretty much tried everything. In terms of what do people actually utilise, well, in 2018 and then again in 2019, I published 2 research papers looking at what supplements that people actually utilise. This is survey data from one of these trials. I think it was around about 80 bodybuilders in this particular trial. And you can see on average, male bodybuilders use around 7 supplements, female bodybuilders around 5 supplements in this particular trial. The other trial is very similar numbers. I think it went as high as 9 supplements in most cases. And then these are percentages of the population which people utilise. And then it's ranked in terms of what are the most popular supplements. So you can see here that the most popular supplement by far that people utilise is protein powder. That's what people use. 75% of males, almost 90% of the females. After that, it's a multivitamin. Then 50% you're looking at are using branched chain amino acids and creatine supplements, and then it kind of drops off and starts going lower after that. You could probably group the individual aminos along with the branched chain amino acids supplements as well. But you can see a lot of people are using supplements, and of the 7 supplements that people are utilizing, you're probably talking protein powder, multivitamin, creatine, branched chain amino acids, maybe a fat burner, a multivitamin, and then omega-3 fatty acid are the main ones that people utilize. And then there's a whole host of miscellaneous supplements that people will utilize as well. In terms of the contribution this makes to people's energy, it can be quite a bit. So you can see that around about 20 to 30% of people's energy can come from supplements. So those calories add up, and that's something that's worth bearing in mind, because people don't always consider these things when they're getting ready for events, that they can be getting a lot of energy from the supplements as well. So you need to count that as part of your daily energy requirements. In terms of research, here are some of the trials that I've ran down the years, and I'm just going to sort of briefly explain how these trials kind of work. So the gold standard for doing any sort of supplement research really would be to do what's called a randomized control trial, and ideally to do a double-blind one whereby you don't know what treatment arm the volunteer is on and the investigator doesn't, and the individual doesn't know as well. So you're both blinded to the person taking the placebo or the treatment. You want it to be a crossover because you want every individual to try both the supplement and the placebo, rather than one group on one and one group and the other. And what you effectively do, and I've done in a lot of these trials, is you recruit a whole bunch of people to take part in your trial, and you can see here I've got collegiate athletes, because that's very typically what you get when you're recruiting people to take part in these trials, because it's hard to get large cohorts of say bodybuilders or advanced training athletes. So very often you're recruiting the people that are around at the time, and these are very often students. You would give them a placebo or the treatment, take a blood sample from them or do a battery of tests, get them to carry out some exercise. So this is a isokinetic dynamometer. It's hooked up to a computer over here. So that'll give you a readout of the person's maximal isometric contractions that they're producing, the most amount of force they're producing, the most amount of eccentric and concentric force as well that's going on there, rate of force development as well. And then you can test a whole bunch of other things. You might want to do sprinting, you might want to do cycling, jumping. It really depends on what it is specifically that you're trying to test. Following that bout of exercise, what you then do is you then maybe get them to take a second blood sample after there, and then once you've run everyone through the trial, you'll look at the results. So this is one of the trials here that I ran. This is from, I think, this paper here. And we were looking to see, okay, well, pre and post exercise, this is the placebo arm. This is the citrulline malate arm, which is a supplement. And you can see blood lactate concentrations go up post exercise in them both. But there was no difference in the blood lactate concentrations between the placebo and the supplement. So nothing actually happened with that particular metric. This is reps achieved over time. These are the sets. So this is set 1 to set 10. These are the repetitions. And you've got the placebo versus the citrulline malate. And then this is the average performance. And over time, you can see that the number of repetitions that people were able to perform were reduced as the supplement trial ran on. And you can see here that the supplement didn't actually fare any better than the placebo. So this is the sort of thing that you do in these trials. And there's lots of nuance as to how you might decide to run them, but I can tell you, having run at least, as I say, 5 different trials looking at fish oil, citrulline malate, sleep supplements, and being involved in a few other things in the background, bilberry juice, gooseberry juice as well, cherry active, things like this. We've not often seen a large difference between placebos and treatments at all. In fact, I can honestly say we've never found a difference when it comes to the treatment, or the results have been very ambiguous and not enough to convince us that they offered any particular advantage. But that's probably because we're always investigating sort of fringe type supplements. But that's essentially what you're going to do. Now, in terms of investigating the evidence to see if a supplement kind of works or not, what you really have to be aware of is that there's different ways in which you can do it. So in terms of the evidence, what I just described there was a randomized control trial. So you've got a group of people here, placebo treatment, and then you test to see if it has an effect or not. This is much better than doing what are called observational studies, which are really these ones here, where you're just sort of trying to observe what's happening in the population, and you're not giving anyone any supplements or anything. You might just be asking, are you taking creatine? Are you not taking creatine? And then you're following them up 6 months later and finding out, okay, is one group more muscular than the other group? It's not a controlled setting. More to the bottom of the pyramid, you can see you've got animal trials, because the application from the animal to the human, there can be differences. There's also in vitro trials, and this is whereby you're looking to see whether or not something happens in a test tube. You might treat a whole load of cells in a test tube with something like cherry active or with citrulline malate. That might cause some vasodilation to take place within a vein or across some cells. They might release some compound, but that doesn't mean that it's not necessarily going to translate into something that happens in the control trial in terms of an improvement in performance. There's also case reports, so that's where someone's taken someone, you've got an individual person. Again, it's not very controlled. Opinions and letters, again, from experts from here. So I would be classed as an expert on supplements, and I'd be giving you the opinion at the moment. Beyond that, once you get to the top of the pyramid, though, we've got these things called meta-analyses, and that's whereby you're looking at, say, 50, 60 randomized control trials, or maybe 10 to 20 randomized control trials, and you're saying, okay, well, what is the trend in here? If you've got, say, 4 of them that show nothing, 2 that show an effect, and then 4 that show a negative effect, then you can be pretty sure that that supplement, when we combine all the data together, that there might be something going on where that one doesn't really have an effect, or it's potentially going to negatively affect performance. And what you're doing is you're really collating those randomized control trials. What doesn't really count as scientific evidence, though, is all this stuff over here. So we have to be skeptic, if you like, when people are talking about supplements. It's interesting to get case reports, but they always require more scrutiny at the end of the day. And this sort of stuff, like I said over here, case studies, this is what we really want to be, randomized control trials, this is really what we want to be looking at to see if things are working. And then the combination, the collation of these randomized control trials here to get the good quality evidence. The European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, what they will do is they will give approved health claims on a supplement. So if something works or not, then they can give you an approved health claim. And I'm going to give you an example of this from here. And usually they require around about 20 odd randomized control trials, and they all have to be going in the same direction, e.g. that it works, for something to be an approved health claim. And it's usually very specific as well. So again, I'm going to give you an example of this. So beta-glucans is something I'm interested in. This was what my PhD was all about, was the beta-glucans that you find within oats and barley. And this is a oat underneath a microscope, and these blue lines you can see here, which have been highlighted with a fluorescent microscope, these are different carbohydrate structures, and these are the beta-glucans. So they hold the oat together. And the great thing about these beta-glucans is that they lower blood cholesterol. And we don't have to go into the reason why that is the case, but if they lower blood cholesterol, then they reduce the risk of coronary heart disease. So it's a very useful supplement. Now, that's an approved health claim from EFSA. But to get that approved health claim, there had to be a submission of 19 randomized control trials, and then there was 3 meta-analyses which contained 1,063, 1,600 and 1,080 participants in each of those meta-analyses. Now, there'll be a lot of crossover between these different meta-analyses. Some of these trials will be included, but that's more the burden of evidence that you need to prove that something really actually does work. And the health claim is that you need to have at least 3 grams of this beta-glucan. So this supplement here only contains 500 mg per capsule. So you'd actually need 6 of these capsules to get any sort of beneficial health effect. And it's really only beneficial, the health claim, in terms of people that already have high cholesterol. So if you're healthy already, then it doesn't make any odds, and the health claim doesn't cover that. So we have to bear that in mind. That's the sort of source that we're looking for in terms of approved health claim. Now, we have to be mindful of the internet, because the internet is not peer reviewed. So Subversity was always the website you would go to find out about supplements back in my day. But other websites like Examine, for example, can be useful as well. But you just have to be conscious of the fact that they're not peer reviewed. So citrulline is something that I've done some studies on. I've got 2 papers on it, 1 in the pipeline to get published. We've never noticed any effect of that particular supplement on improving performance. And actually, if you look in the literature, there's a lot of studies that have found a very similar thing to us. So I think the jury's still out on that one. But if you go onto some website like examine.com, then what you can see is that they're almost endorsing and recommending that particular supplement. And they have an evidence hierarchy that looks like this, which is very similar, you'll notice, to this pyramid here. So I would say that the website can be somewhat misleading if you don't know what you're looking at. And you can see here there's only a single study here, which is they've got featured, whereby they're saying that there are notable improvements in training performance. And no real scientist would hedge their bets on a single study, I would say, from there. So we have to be mindful of the internet, and peer-reviewed evidence is really where we want to be going if we want to find out if a supplement potentially works or not. So just to summarize that little component there. In terms of supplementation, there's often a very limited number of trials, so randomized control trials, looking at supplements, particularly new cutting-edge supplements. There's very often there might only be one or two papers that have ever been published on it. It might not be specific to your use that you want to look at. It might not even be specific to your sport. So if you want to use it to see if you can get a higher 1 rep max or 5 rep max, it might have been tested in cyclists. It's no guarantee that it's going to work on you, and it might have been tested on collegiate athletes rather than people who've been training for 5 or 6 years. In terms of supplements, well-researched ones are caffeine, creatine, protein powders, and carbohydrate solutions. There's a lot of research done on that stuff, and we're pretty confident that this stuff works. Often underpowered studies, it's hard to get participants. As I've mentioned already, results are not always applicable. It's hard to run these trials because even when I give people supplements to use and take away, I can't always account for their rest, their lifestyle, and their diet. So that makes it very challenging. As I've said already, the things that people are trying to do are not always generalizable to the weight room. If someone's doing a jumping challenge, how does that relate to your ability to squat more for reps? And then the quality of the supplements and the dosages might not even reflect what is required to get results. So the study that I was doing in citrulline malate, we used an 8-gram dosage, but there's no established dosage yet as to what is the effective amount. And the paper, if you go and read it, you'll find out that the company that we utilised, my protein underdosed their product when we actually measured it in the lab. So it's a bit of a minefield for the consumer in terms of identifying if a supplement works or not. And the burden of proof for most supplements in terms of its efficacy is really just lacking. And there's no beating about the bush with that one. Okay, so the next question really is, do you even need supplements? As I've mentioned already, you're looking for that 1%, yeah? And as I would probably quite frankly state, the vast majority of them are just, they don't work, yeah? Or they're only useful in very simple circumstances. And you can see here, this is the sale bin at the supplement shop, and the guy's thinking, can I get a deal here? And the best thing he could probably do is to save his money, because it's likely not to none of them are likely to work at all. Although there is some protein powders I can see in here. In terms of situations whereby they probably do work, micronutrients for nutrient deficiencies, very obvious use there. If you're in a disease state and lacking, say, iron, so if you are anemic, for example, that seems like a very good utilization of a supplement. If you're pregnant or another vulnerable population, such as an infant growing, then vitamin E is something that we often prescribe. But the other obvious situation is the improvement in sporting performance. And that's what we're going to talk about here now. So, it seems to have gone red. Okay, now, the vast majority of supplements, they don't work. Yep. And very often they're based on some sort of vague mechanistic argument, e.g. if I increase this in the bloodstream, then that will go up, and then this will result in an improvement in performance. That's all very well, but that often doesn't translate when you actually try and test it in a randomized control trial. The other thing you've got to be cautious of is that very often the supplement industry is really just preying on people with insecurities, promising unbelievable results, but in the most cases, these athletes that are using these things are using anabolic steroids themselves, so things which are likely to give them results. They're not using the products at all, or they're just simply lying to you, like doing a before and after photograph, which might be photoshopped or modified in some significant way. So we have to be very cautious of a lot of supplements. And this is a nice quote here from Elaine Norton, who incidentally said this in the very week that I was putting this supplement lecture slide together. And he's absolutely right. 95% are junk, and the ones, and most of them are just overhyped completely. Okay, so in terms of supplements and how they work, right, there's a few different ways in which they could do something. So one is to act as a central nervous system stimulant. So that is caffeine, choline, amphetamines, alcohol. So if they do that, then they potentially make work seem less arduous. Obviously, we're not taking alcohol. We can't take amphetamines, but caffeine is a very popular supplement. Other things that they do is they increase the storage availability of a limited substrate. So creatine, carnitine, and carbohydrates. So useful if you're out cycling and you need a carbohydrate replacement, then you can utilize it as that. Or if you can increase the creatine stores in your muscles, then you might be able to potentially to lift a little bit more and recover a little bit better. I've touched on the fat source, the fueling here, but you've got glucose, you've got medium chain triglycerides. You might take these when you're riding on a bike, or ketones. These are very popular now as well, very expensive as well. They might neutralize a lactic acid, so the lowering of your blood's pH or the cell's pH. So sodium bicarbonate, sodium citrate, or beta-alanine, they do this. Or the other thing they can do is they facilitate recovery. So protein powders, carbohydrates replacing what is lost, electrolyte solutions to help you replace the body water. So these are the 5 sort of basic domains. There are a few other domains. So prevention of nutritional deficiencies or restoring of optimal health, as I've mentioned already, or trying to increase that protein synthesis. Now, the reason why I've put these 6 and 7 here is because these kind of fall into a slightly different category. 6 and 7 you can get from food, no problem at all. So you could eat enough food and get all the vitamins that you require, for example. Unless you're perhaps vegan or vegetarian, you might struggle a little bit. Protein synthesis, if you want to increase that, then you could just eat protein. So protein powders are certainly convenient. Recovering after exercise, again, you could probably get that just by eating fruit, enough pasta, things like that. But it's certainly, depending on the situation, a carbohydrate solution might be useful if you're doing multi-events or competing more than once in a day or multiple times a week. So these are the main sort of ways in which these supplements actually work. Okay, so with that in mind, it's a case of, well, what supplements should you actually take then? Because as I said, it can become a little bit of a minefield. And the Australian Institute of Sport used to have a very good website, and they broke supplements down into different categories. And I've always gone by utilising this because it kind of summarises the evidence in the area really, really well. And they broke the supplements down into, this is a Group A classification, this is Group B, and then there's Group D. They don't actually group Group C supplements. And these are the main ones that they reckon that we should be taking if you want to try and improve performance. And these are things like sports foods, so these are sports drinks, sports gels, whey protein, electrolyte replacements. There's medical supplements, they say, so they utilise things like multivitamins and vitamin D, for example, iron supplements. There are performance supplements, so caffeine, creatine, beta-alanine, beetroot juice potentially as well. So these are the sort of main ones that they suggest utilising. Group B supplements are supplements whereby, again, the evidence is not quite as good to support their usage, but there is some evidence that suggests that there might be some beneficial effects. So these are polyphenolics, so you've got tart cherry juice, there's things like antioxidants, there's fish oils in here, there's glucosamine, there's glutamine, and again, you could potentially utilise these, but there's not necessarily any solid dosaging structures or anything like that to utilise with these things. Group D supplements are just ones that they say don't use because they're very high risk. So stimulants here, classic one DMAA, prohormones, you can see DHEA, GH releasers, they're saying stay away from these ones as well. And then Group C supplements, they don't even list them because they don't want you to potentially think like these supplements are potentially special in some way and get you to go away and utilise them. So if they're not really on this Group A or Group B list here, then the Australian Institute of Sport are saying, well, they're probably not worth really taking and are unlikely to really have an advantage. Although things do change over time, and some supplements are likely to move from Group B to Group A, some from Group C to Group B, and some might go in the other direction as more evidence kind of suggests that they're not as effective as you might potentially think. Okay, and by all means, pause this video at any point if you want to have a look. The other thing to say is that just because a supplement or something might be potentially good for you doesn't mean that more of it is likely to be of benefit. So this is the a Gaussian distribution, and it's a classic sort of bell curve. And the optimal dose for a lot of things is likely to follow a sort of pattern that looks like this, whereby if you take a small amount, it doesn't really do anything. If you increase the dose up to the optimal amount, then that's where you get the best results. And then taking any more of it after that is either going to give you diminishing returns, or is likely to potentially be ergolytic, e.g. Counterproductive, and actually might impair your performance. And I've got caffeine here. This is a nice example. So caffeine, the ideal dose is somewhere between 3 to 6 mgs per kilogram of body weight. But actually, if you start going from 9 up to 12, then you start to see reduction in performance from here. And you can see that marked out in this graph here. We've got the reference down here from Esprit. A lot of vitamins are like this, so you can suffer from vitamin acidosis. So, and I've seen people with this having this problem. They just think, okay, I've got a certain amount of vitamin C. If I take more of it, it's bound to be better, or vitamin A, and then they can become sick, dizzy, disorientated from doing these sort of extra high dosages. So too much can certainly be bad for you, and you definitely want to avoid mega dosing. So certainly take what is prescribed at the end of the day. Okay, in terms of supplements you should be utilising, you can go and have a look at that Australian Institute of Sport slide that I had up, but these are the ones that I always recommend. So creatine, protein powders, your health supplements, electrolyte solutions, caffeine, you've got your pH buffers, and then there are some sleep supplements as well. I'm not going to talk about protein powders because I have got an individual lecture all on protein, so go away and have a look at that. And I have got another one on the electrolyte solutions as well, so I'm only going to touch on that briefly at the same time. I could do an individual lecture, and I probably will, on each of these supplements, so this is only going to really be a whistle-stop tour of these. Okay, so creatine is very well researched, very well evidenced, and how it works is the ultimate energy store within your muscle is something called ATP. So when we run out of ATP, we need to get more ATP. And what happens is when we want to carry out any muscular contractions, our body will lose a phosphate of adenosine triphosphate. That breaking of the phosphates off of the chain releases energy, and then what we're left behind with is adenosine diphosphate, so 2 phosphates. If we supplement our body with creatine, then what happens is we can increase our body's stores of phosphocreatine, and then what phosphocreatine does is it donates one of its phosphates to ADP, and then you can get more ATP. So that's how the process works, and it seems to improve strength and power. It seems to be useful for improvement in muscular endurance, so you're going to recover a little bit more between sets and post-exercise, and this has got an indirect effect on muscle mass and body composition. And people are interested to know if it has an effect on increasing protein synthesis as well. But it certainly works. It certainly does work. You may have to use a loading dose to take along with this, but dosaging is between 0.35 per kilogram of body weight, although actually I think that's a typo on my part. You're really looking at around about 2 to 5 grams for a sort of 75 kilogram to 90 gram individual, with a loading dose of between 20 to 25 grams for the first 5 days. Does seem to cause a little bit of water retention, but the other side effects seem to be largely blown out of proportion. And if you are looking to increase strength and power, then this is the number one muscle mass supplement that you should be utilizing along with protein powder. The stuff works, and like I say, it's well researched. In terms of health supplements, you're really taking these things to ensure that you're not becoming nutrient deficient and that you're just working at optimal health from here. These things are not a substitute for a healthy diet. You should be having a healthy diet, and you can take these things alongside it. In the off season, when I'm got lots of nutrients in my diet, I don't even bother taking multivitamins. It's only when I start to get ready for competition and I know I'm potentially at risk of becoming deficient because my diet is becoming more and more limited that I start to take these supplements. Essential fatty acids, so fish oil. I have done some research into these. Cardioprotective, anti-inflammatory. Do they reduce your muscle soreness and help improve protein synthesis? It's certainly up for debate. It's less important for people who consume oily fish, but if you don't like oily fish, then you can just take a capsule from there. Fiber supplements might be useful for those that suffer from IBS. So people who suffer with constipation, have digestive issues, get bloating, things like that. These things might potentially have a prebiotic effect as well. But again, it's one of those ones whereby unless you've got issues already and unless you're not consuming enough fiber already, you might not notice a difference from taking something like a fiber supplement at all. And the fish oil is something that I've published on, and the gut microbiota is certainly an area in which I spent a long time working on as well. So it really, if you're not suffering from any digestive issues, your gut health is probably already fine, provided you're consuming enough fiber in a varied diet already. So it might not make any real difference. As I said already, I've got a video on hydration and exercise, so be sure to go and check that out. But a 2 to 3% loss of body water can result in a significant drop in your performance. So these electrolyte powders, you can get them as tabs, you can get them as powders, just drop them in your water, can help you maintain hydration for a full session, particularly if you're someone that sweats quite a lot as well. You should be having these things as well. In terms of these carbohydrate gels or carbohydrate drinks, really, unless you're exercising for more than 90 minutes, you don't really need them. And it's really for aerobic type exercise that you should be thinking about taking this sort of stuff on board, because you don't really expend enough energy while you're exercising, doing weights to really warrant huge amounts of carbohydrates coming on board. But if you're trying to gain weight, it certainly can be a useful strategy to consider. Caffeine, a very useful supplement, certainly helps you reduce your rate of perceived exertion. So where exercise is difficult, challenging, where it's hard, this is something that you might want to consider utilizing. It binds to something called the adenosine receptor in the brain. So when your adenosine receptors are empty, that's where you feel tired and sleepy. So if you can take some caffeine, that tops up those receptors and makes you feel less tired. So it'll increase your alertness, focus, and like I say, reduce your ability to feel tired. Now, I've mentioned already what the optimal dosages are of this, and you're probably looking at somewhere between 113 to 225 mg, for a 75 kilogram individual. You can take it as powder, gum, tablets. It's very often in a lot of pre-workouts as well. And the stuff works, so if you're not taking it, then certainly think about taking it, but also consider how it might potentially affect your sleep as well, because that is something that is very individual. Acid buffers, so we're talking sodium bicarbonate and we're talking beta-alanine. So as we do exercise, we get a buildup of lactic acid. Lactic acid is an acid, as the name suggests, and it's that drop in the pH which interferes with your ability for your muscles to contract properly. So beta-alanine and sodium bicarbonate can be very useful for exercise that lasts between around 1 minute to 5 minutes, that lactic acid zone, and sort of repeated bouts of exercise, so sprints, bodybuilding sets, if you like. High dosages of beta-alanine can cause something called paresthesia, and that's where you get that tingly feeling. So a lot of people can feel really sick when they're taking that sort of thing, and because of that, they might not want to take a supplement like this. They also get like prickly heat. So you really have to be careful and mindful of the dosing, and you might want to split the dosing up over the course of the day. Sodium bicarbonate, on the other hand, that's baking soda, very high in salt, as you can imagine. So that's going to affect your blood pressure if you're using it all the time, but is effective at buffering lactic as well. Too much of it can cause you GI issues, and you might want to practice this stuff at the same time. The dosages are down at the bottom here, you can see. Incidentally, mammals have huge amounts of muscle carnosine within their bodies. Mammals that are aquatic, and that's because that helps buffer the lactic acid building up from being submerged without the oxygen for a long time, and that's really what the beta-alanine does. It gets converted with histidine to that carnosine, and you're topping up the levels just like a aquatic mammal, if you like. So this stuff works, and again, very well it's well researched as well. In terms of the sort of final class of supplements that you might want to consider utilizing, these are really things called sleep aids. And again, research not too hot on this. I have been involved in a single trial that's looked at sleep aids as well. We were looking at Cherry Active, which gets converted to melatonin in the body. And the sleep aids are going to work in one of two ways. They're either going to increase your sleep latency, which is the amount of time it takes you to fall asleep, and your sleep efficiency, which is how good the sleep is when you when you are asleep. Do you get more deep sleep? Do you get more REM sleep as well? The way they're going to work is they're going to increase your endogenous melatonin levels, and they're going to increase your growth hormone concentration. So they'll increase your growth hormone concentrations as well, and that's something that helps you sleep as well. Good thing about these things is you can test them very easy. You can keep a sleep journal. You get lots of little apps. There's lots of apps you can get on your phone, on your wristwatches as well. People have got little rings and things like that as well that they wear, which track sleep. So very easy to test these things as well. And you certainly should try testing them, because some people have no problem falling asleep, but they've got poor sleep efficiency. Some people are the opposite, where they have good sleep efficiency, but they really struggle to get to sleep as well. Okay, high risk supplements. So this is the final thing we're going to say really about supplements. Is there are a category of supplements, as I mentioned before, called high risk supplements. And the high risk supplements really are your fat burners, your testosterone boosters and modulators, and your pre-workouts as well. And when we talk about high risk supplements, we're really talking about things which contain what would essentially cause you to fail a drugs test if you were to compete in something which is tested with by the World Anti-Doping Agency. So fat burners are renowned, some of them, particularly if you buy under-the-counter ones, for containing amphetamines. So you'd fail a drug test for taking them. Pre-workouts, same problem as well. So this one here, Angel Dust, along with a long line of supplements which contain essentially amphetamines. The one is DMAA in this particular one. Testosterone boosters and modulators, some of these are just simply steroids by a different name, so they're pro-hormones, and they're packaged up to look like actual supplements as well. So you've got to be cautious of these things again, because they'll cause you to fail a drug test as well. So my advice on these things is always check the labelling, and if you're unsure, just don't take them, because legit supplements, or rather fat burners, generally speaking, don't really tend to do anything. Testosterone boosters, again, they don't really tend to do anything, and that's a whole lecture by itself. And then pre-workouts, the active ingredient very often in them is the caffeine anyway, so you might be as well just taking the caffeine by itself and not risking feeling unpleasant or potentially failing a drug test as well. Okay, so just to summarise, there are a few key supplements which might potentially increase your performance, which you should be looking at. Those are the ones which are protein powder, electrolyte solutions, creatine, beta-alanine as well, and health supplements. Those are sort of really the main ones. A lot of supplement trials don't necessarily look into a lot of these novel supplements, so we have to be cautious of that. There's not a lot of research looking into a lot of supplements. Supplements are definitely not quick fixes as well, and they're definitely not a substitute for a good quality diet as well. A poor diet, you can't outrun it. That's for sure. And then consumers should really be aware of these high risk supplements, particularly because you can fail a drug test associated with them as well. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this presentation. As I say, it was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. If you're interested in looking at some of my other research, as I say, go and have a look on PubMed. Be sure to check out our page, proprepcoaching.com, and check out our Instagram. You can have a look at some of our great athletes and some of the great results that we've produced during the years. And if you think we can help you, then please do not hesitate to get in touch. If you do want to follow me, then check me out at Pro Prep Coaching, Fueled by Scott's Oats, and at wmbf.co.uk as well. We've got the website here, and then we've got the other website here as well. Thanks for your attention, and hopefully you enjoyed this. All right, cheers then. Ciao, ciao.